Hello and welcome to another Zizaran AMA, this time featuring David Brevik, the creator of games such as It Lurks Below, Diablo, Marvel Heroes, and more. And thank you again so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
So, could you make a full list of all the games that you've made? Because it's quite an extensive list that you worked on.
Yeah, I don't know if I can create a complete list, but I'll go through some of the bigger titles, I guess. First game I ever worked on was a game called Gordo 106, the Mutant Lab Monkey, which was a game on the Atari Lynx.
Oh, wow.
So long. This was in 1990, 1991, somewhere right there.
Oh, wow.
And then I did some Genesis and Super Nintendo games, Arrow the Acrobat, and Justice League Task Force, which is a fighting game with Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, that kind of stuff. And then Diablo 2, and then I helped doing some design work and feedback and things like that on a bunch of other Blizzard titles with StarCraft, Warcraft 3, and World of Warcraft. And then I also I did Pirates of the Dark Water. That was a Genesis game as well.
Oh, wow. I love that show.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, wow, I didn't realize that. I'm kind of surprised that people even knew what the show was. It wasn't all that popular, and I get it quite a bit that people are like, oh, I remember that game, or I love that show, or whatever. That was that's funny. Oh, I did NBA Jam, basketball game, and super high impact football. And then my own designs are mainly things like Diablo 2, and then after that was Hellgate London, which is the original looter shooter, and then Marvel Heroes. I worked briefly on Dungeons and Dragons Online and Lord of the Rings Online when I worked for about 6-9 months, something like that. With those teams, and then the latest thing I've done is It Lurks Below, which is a project I did all by myself.
That's insane. That must have been like very interesting to work with like different teams and the difference between doing something completely solo. How long did it take you to make It Lurks Below?
It was about 2 years from first line of code to finished to release product. And I did, all the pixel art and the engine and the programming and the design and things like that. I got a lot of design feedback from my wife and the community and whatnot, because it went into early access about a year into development, and then the community really, helped and suggested things and things like that. It was a great way to kind of build the game together. So I really enjoyed that process.
It's very impressive, honestly. Like it's still like it shocks me a little bit that you got it done that fast, because I've played it and it's a very fun game as well. So it's
thank you.
Crazy. How did you get like started with game development? Like, did you study anything specifically to get into game development, or how did it all get started?
No, I mean, yes. So the very first the very first game I ever got or played was Pong. My dad got an Atari Pong machine in it was maybe 1975, 1976, somewhere right in there. They had this, no cartridges or anything like that. It was just only played Pong. But that really was the first video game that I played. And then it was not too long after that like Space Invaders came out, and I was super hooked on Space Invaders, and really enjoyed that. There was a Space Invaders machine at our kind of local deli that I would, ride my bike over there and dump all my allowance into. And so then I was just really interested in games in general. And then in 1970, 1979, somewhere right in there. When I was in about 6th or 7th grade, my dad brought home an Apple II Plus, which it was like the very first home computer that Apple made. It was that's when I didn't have a lot of games. I mean, I had an Atari 2600, so I had that, and we had cartridges and stuff. But the Apple II Plus, if I wanted more games, it was easy to get games on the Apple II Plus. Plus, I could buy a magazine for a lot cheaper and the magazines would have game listings in them. So I mean, complete game program, and so you would like type in the code to make these games or whatever, and I just fell in love, and I just was always programming, always typing in and learning, and taught myself really how to program, and really it was right around that time, 7th, maybe 8th grade, somewhere right in there, I knew that this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I'm one of those weird, strange people that like instantly knows what they want to do with the rest of their life. And I never wavered. It's all I want to do. And it was just kind of a passion from the get-go. And so I taught myself to program, and I started making games. And when I was early in high school, maybe 9th or 10th grade, I made a game. My first, I guess, published game. It was self-published.
All right.
I made this BMX. I don't have a bicycle motocross game that was really, really terrible. But I convinced the local computer store owner to allow me to sell it there.
Oh wow!
And
that's so cool.
and it was like, on discs that I created, and I put it on the store shelf. I didn't sell a single copy.
Oh no!
And that was kind of my introduction to gaming and rejection. It was the
Oh, that's a fun
but
start,
that was
though.
kind of. Yeah, but then it didn't deter me at all. I kept working and kept learning and kept programming. And by the time I was in high school, I was quite good at programming. And in fact, I taught my high school programming class because I knew more than the teacher did. So people would come to me for advice and talk about how to make things work and stuff. And I was, and then that was really. Then I went to school. I went to university and got a computer science degree, and then which I didn't even need to show up for class. And then out of college, I got recruited by Intel. They wanted me to make microcode, which is the code that runs the microchips. But I wasn't interested in doing that. I just wanted to make video games. So I took this first job. My parents were not super happy that I was taking a job at a video game company instead of with Intel.
Right.
And then they were really not happy and not surprised when this first video game company, I was there about maybe 6 months, and my paychecks were bouncing.
Oh
and
no! Oh no!
I'm like, I can't work here anymore if you guys can't pay me. My parents are like, yeah, see, it wouldn't be happening at Intel, but but eventually, then it was that eventually I got in a more stable position, and was able to kind of make video games and release them, and the rest was kind of history.
So what was was Blizzard the first big company you worked at like that with, that sold a shit ton?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. And Blizzard wasn't a big company at the time.
Yeah.
When we started it was two separate development companies that kind of merged together to make one big bigger company,
Mhm.
but we weren't all that big when they bought us. When we were a separate development company called Condor, and when they bought us, we were maybe like 20, 25-ish people, something like that. And Blizzard down south was maybe 50, 60 people at the most, something like that. So we weren't, it was 100 people total or something like that in all of Blizzard when and that's right around Warcraft 2, Diablo time, StarCraft time. That was about, I think by the time StarCraft released and we started making Diablo 2 and things like that, it was, the company was maybe 150 to 200 people at the most.
Wow. It must be
But
so...
anyway, eventually that was the biggest selling stuff in my career was, Diablo. But it was other things too. Other games I had made. NBA Jam on the console sold really well.
That's awesome.
And so I had worked at companies that had quite a bit of success.
It must have been really cool, like seeing everything go from, all the way back where Pong was created to how like the evolution of video game is today with like, now they're starting to become more and more virtual reality games and stuff like that. Do you follow more of like the super new age games like Half-Life Alyx and stuff for the VR?
No, I don't have a VR. It doesn't. It's not as exciting for me. I am blind in one eye, so I have no depth perception, and so the VR stuff doesn't work as well on me as maybe as it does on other people. So I've never really been a huge fan of it. Plus, I get motion sick really easily. So both of those things have kind of deterred me from that. But in general, I keep up with the actual technology and the gaming news and things like that. And it's amazing, some of the stuff. And I've tried to have I've used other VR sets, and I've gone to Oculus and things like that. They've invited me over and tested out the technology and stuff. So I've experienced it, but I'm not a big avid VR person.
So with all your experience with gaming, because I'm guessing you still play quite a lot of games yourself as well.
Yep.
Do you have like a top 2 or top 3 favorite games?
No.
That's fair. That's fair. It's a hard question. That's a hard question.
I don't know. I mean, all time, it's really tough, right? And games that maybe I enjoyed these particular games in this era. I think that they, for instance, let's say EverQuest. I loved EverQuest. I played so much EverQuest. A fantastic game that really was a unique experience. But now you go back and you look at EverQuest, and it's kind of clunky. I mean, it's got a lot of warts, that's for sure. Yeah. But it's still very fun. But it's not quite the same experience now that a lot of people have. Other companies have made MMOs and things like that. Doesn't quite have the same, excitement that it did at one time. But that's definitely up there on the top of my favorite games of all time, because I put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into the game. So, that I played that a lot. Mario, the very first Mario came out in 1987, somewhere right in there. And, I played that so much that I almost failed out of college. Like, I mean, it was, I just couldn't stop playing. So the only classes that it was okay that I didn't go to were my math and my computer class, but the rest of them I actually had to go to classes to learn things.
That sounds very similar for me, except it was Diablo 2 that made that happen for me. This is technically your fault.
So I don't know. There's a huge list, and I think that maybe Minecraft, EverQuest. Believe it or not, Solitaire, and Mario are probably my most played games.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. We're gonna start taking some of the questions directly from chat as well, starting with Keith McCall asking, in ARPGs, how do game creators think about balancing the game for hardcore versus casual players? And how do you make the game fun for those who only play a short time, as well as those that spend thousands of hours?
That's a great question. It's a tough question to answer. I think that in general, you want to balance the beginning of the game for a more casual experience and the end of the game for a more hardcore experience. You want to make sure that that it's easy to get into and tough to master was like a kind of motto of ours at Blizzard. And so, you know, being able to get into it and as you're getting into it, revealing the complexity and having a lot of depth at the end game, and a lot of choices and a lot of ways that that allow people to customize their character in a way that makes it unique, and they can find those little combinations that give them a huge advantage. That's I think that's the exciting thing for kind of a more hardcore audience. Whereas that stuff maybe is really important for the end game stuff, but you know, getting through kind of a story or things like that, or you know, an easy mode or what you know, normal difficulty, as in Diablo,
Yeah.
you know, normal nightmare hell difficulties. You know, getting through normal difficulty, you don't really need to get into all of that stuff, and you can pretty much choose any skills that you want and be able to get through the game. Now, if you want to get all the way through, you know, Act 5 and that, you know, in hell difficulty or beyond, then you know, you got to kind of know what you're doing. So I think that those are, you know, that's in general what we try and do. As for keeping people engaged, I think that that has a lot to do with a lot of different layers, but giving something for people to look forward to, giving them hope that they can find this rare thing that they're trying to look for, and then rewarding them along the path with all these little micro rewards spread out so that they kind of layer on top of each other. Oh, I got a new level, or oh, I revealed a new thing. I just want to go one more location, or I just got a new quest and I really want to finish that one, or you know, those kind of things will keep people going, keep people playing.
Nice. Yeah, no, chase items is like something Diablo 2 perfected, and something I've been talking about, especially the last few weeks with like the reveal of the D2 remaster. I've like talked about, like, that's something Diablo 2 really nailed more than like every other game I've played. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
Narsor325 is asking, what is your opinion on crafting in action role-playing games? For example, in Path of Exile today, crafting is the ultimate way to get very good rare items.
Yeah, I think that it's great. I love crafting. I think that it's exciting and fun to be able to do crafting. It adds element of feeling more like an item belongs to you. If you're kind of into the, you know, if constructing something, you just naturally get, I think, take more pride in that. The fact that I've worked so hard to put this all together, to craft it or whatever, is kind of a rewarding experience in and of itself. Even more rewarding than, I think, than just finding something. And that's one of the reasons that I think that rune words worked really well in Diablo 2 and things like that. So any kind of crafting system I love, and so I mean, that in It Lurks Below, that was a big part of what made It Lurks Below, is that there was just so much crafting to do.
Do you think it's hard to balance the excitement between like crafting being the almost powerful, or like while still keeping drops interesting?
Yeah, no, because drops are interesting. If drops are interesting, can be interesting on, you know, for crafting as well. Like when you're looking for that particular rune or something like that in Diablo 2, it's like you find it, that's interesting. That you were searching for it, you found it, you got it. That was just as interesting as, hey, this awesome unique dropped or whatever, you know. That so keeping, I think that crafting components and as well as interesting drops are something that can happen at the same time. Not only that, but also it's important to kind of have some slots that are dedicated to crafting and some that are not, in my opinion, because then you have the ability to, you know, to find something is still there, right? It's not every single slot is all about crafting. It's making sure that, hey, I built this thing. Some are just crafting, some are crafting or found, and then some are found. Is kind of the perfect balance, in my opinion.
That's perfect. I love that. Darks is asking, here's a question. What key features help make content infinitely replayable as opposed to fun for a couple of hours, so I'll try to get in a few days?
Geez, these are great questions. You get it.
Got a good audience.
This is better than some of my, that I get from press people. But I think that it's not an easy thing to do. But I'd say the biggest factor is randomness. Having randomness keeps content fresh, right? When you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're going to be facing. I mean, the monsters and the combinations and things like that come up keep the content fresh and interesting. Oh, I'm facing this group, or group 1, group 2, group 3, whatever. And that I think that helps keep everything kind of fresh and interesting, making sure that you don't know what's coming. As for the balance, I think that randomness is really important, and the timing of those randomness a lot of it comes down to kind of psychology that's kind of well studied when it deals with things like slot machines.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, playing an ARPG is a little bit like pulling the lever on a slot machine. And so every time I kill a monster, I pull that lever, and nothing may come out. My I don't know, whatever a slot machine costs, a quarter, I don't know, $1, I don't know.
I'm not sure. It depends where you are.
A dollar comes out or whatever, or I get a little bit of, a little bit something cool, or I like hit the jackpot, and so like the kind of the excitement of being able to kind of pull that lever all the time, and the pace at which you could win, and the way that you get your money back and things like that are in a slot machine is kind of the same philosophy that we use for how often you should be getting cool stuff out of the random number generator.
Yeah, and I mean, Mephisto is like the pinnacle of that for me. In fact, I bring this up a lot, and I feel like Mephisto is probably the most impressive thing I've seen in a game ever. Because I have somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 hours in just farming Mephisto. And the fact that literally that like 30-60 second route can be that entertaining is just breathtakingly beautiful to me, because there's so many cool things that can happen, and it's very, very impressive. And I hope more games in the future will have something like that, where you're able to make something that's not a large amount of content, but it lasts for so long, and that's insane. Right. Psy TV is asking, if you had the resources and technologies of current day Blizzard back when you created Diablo 2, what would be the first thing you would change about the game?
Well, I don't think that the resources and things like that are really the issue. The being able to make the changes that we wanted to make are, we're just a kind of victim of time, basically. I've talked about this on Twitter and things like that, but we had other plans for Diablo 2 that never came to fruition. There were all sorts of things that we had planned to put into Diablo 2, such as something called BattleNet Town is what we were calling it. Oh. Which is basically the equivalent of like a hub in Path of Exile or whatever. Like you would, instead of jumping into the chat room when you join BattleNet, you're going to just launch into a town, and you'd be on BattleNet and you'd see other people like kind of walking around and stuff, and then you would join games, create instances right there in this town, and never kind of leave the world of Diablo. That was kind of I wanted the more immersive kind of experience, and this is directly influenced from the immersion that I was experiencing at the time with Everquest. Everquest came out in 1999. I really loved how immersive it was and how I felt like I was in this world, and I really wanted to kind of make that same feeling in Diablo 2, where it felt like I was in the world all the time. So that's something that we planned, that we worked on, and then needed to get cut at the end, just because we didn't have the time and resources. So maybe if I had more resources, that would have made it in. That had like guilds and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, wow.
In Diablo 2. In fact, you can see pictures online of like the guild houses that we had already, like some of the art assets for guild houses were in the actual game. They're still in the game and part of the Mopac. I don't know, what do people call it? Do people call it MPQs, the Mopacs or whatever? That's what they were internally. They were called Mopacs because Mike O'Brien made the packing program, and his Mike O'Brien, who became the president of Arena.net, he did the technology for that, and his nickname was Mo because it was Mike O'Brien. So that's Mopac is where is where that comes from. MPQ is like Mike O'Brien's packing program. It was something like that, so that's where that comes from.
Wow, that's awesome. And speaking of Diablo, have you tried any of like the mods that have come out for Diablo 2, like Path of Diablo, etc.?
Yeah. I've tried quite a few. We've even done some streaming of us playing, my wife and I playing them together and stuff. We've tried quite a few of them.
Oh, that's
They're
awesome.
Great. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's very, very fun. Path of Diablo has a reset later today, actually, so I'll be playing that tomorrow. And
cool.
It's really cool, like the fact that we're playing such an old game today, and it's still like very entertaining.
It's really amazing some of the things that the modders have done to be able to like reverse that much of the game, reverse engineer that much of the game, and understand how it works and things like that, and put on everything from new skills to almost anything that you can think of. So it's really incredible what they've done with the technology.
Median XL, it's not one of my favorites, but it's very it's like a different game. Like it's so different. It's very very cool to see what they've done. Mode Remarkable is asking, why do you think Diablo 3 was generally not received as positive as Diablo 2, and how do you feel about Diablo 4?
Well, I got in trouble for saying that. That's I think that there was quite a bit of internet chatter about my comment that Diablo 3, didn't come out like Diablo 2 because, well, the same team didn't make it. And people make a huge difference. The people that are making a product, it's like a different, it's a different writer writing a book in a series or something. 100%. It's just like you're going to get a totally different take on the world and what it's like, and it'll be a totally different kind of film or experience. That's kind of the same with games. A team makes a huge difference, and when they switch teams, that's not you're not going to get the same kind of. There were lots of lessons learned, lots of knowledge that we had as a team making Diablo 1 and 2 that was not transferred over. Almost every single person that worked on Diablo 3 left. And worked on Diablo 2, did not work on Diablo 3. There were only like maybe 2 or 3 people that worked on Diablo 2 that worked on Diablo 3. So and they were not involved really at a high level for Diablo 2, the people that kind of went over. And so I think that that makes a big difference. As for why it wasn't well received, I think it's just because it was just kind of a different game than Diablo 2 in a lot of ways. And I understand why they would do that. They would want to make it their own. Like any kind of designer wants to get excited about whatever it is that they're making, and kind of feel like it's their own, and make choices and decisions based on how they wish that the game would go. So that's I think that we had a design for Diablo 3, and they abandoned that when we left. We had been working on it for, I don't know, a year and a half when we left. So we had technology and stuff like that. And then they completely reset the project multiple times, actually, over the whatever it took, 11 years or something like that to make.
Yeah, it was a long
between
time,
Diablo 2 and Diablo 3.
Yeah, that was a large.
As for Diablo 4, in a lot of ways, it seems a lot like a game that I would design. I think that it's looks pretty promising. I think that they're on, it seems like on a pretty cool path. But we'll just have to wait to see what it turns out like. This is definitely, I think, something that I think that they're making a lot of choices, especially choices that I started to make with Marvel Heroes, that I think that they're going to kind of focus on for something, for Diablo 4. From what I can tell, I mean, I don't have all that much information, so it's again, it's early and a lot of things can change.
So when Diablo 4 comes out, are we going to see you playing and streaming it?
Probably a bit. I played Diablo 3 a little bit, but not that much. I'll probably at least give Diablo 4 a try, but honestly, it's a little weird for me to to play somebody else's version of the thing that I created. So
yeah, no, I get that for sure. That's awesome though. All right, next question is by Mr. Madiki, who asks, who do I blame for the Stygian dolls in Diablo 2?
Well, I don't remember exactly who came up with the design. I think that the artist was a person named Kelly Johnson. And we were all kind of were in on the design. So maybe Eric Schaefer a little bit, myself, and the others that were kind of involved in the monster AI that together that a lot of times when we design something, it was just really giant group effort. Like if you were excited about putting something in the game and you had the initiative, everybody in the company could add things and could become a designer, no matter what your position was in Blizzard North. So we had people are like, oh, I'm really excited about adding, this particular monster. They'd run it by us, go for it or whatever, and then they would make it, and they would make it awesome, and it was exciting for them because they felt ownership over it, and we got a lot of creativity and a lot of cool things, and there were just a few basic rules that they had to follow, and they could add all sorts of stuff. So it was really, there were a lot of collaboration when we were making Diablo 2 and awesome. Diablo 1.
Oh, that's really cool. I remember they killed my level 98 sorceress one time. I was not very happy. That was brutal.
Man. That's brutal.
Yeah. And level 98 was so long back then too. Oh.
Yeah.
Man with Hat is asking, what were the lessons you learned from Diablo or Diablo 2 or any of your other games that you applied later?
Well, the easy one from Diablo 1 to Diablo 2, well, there are two or three I can think of off the top of my head. One is, allow people to run instead of just walking all the way out to Adria. The second thing was that, we can't have peer-to-peer networking. We got to have client server. I think that those are two big lessons that we learned from Diablo 1 and applied to Diablo 2. But there's all sorts of stuff that we learned from Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 that I applied in later products in Hellgate or in Marvel Heroes that kind of go back to some of the lessons learned earlier in Diablo 1 and Diablo 2.
Nice. Think Criticism is asking, in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that the developers currently face that prevent them from making high quality, polished games?
Wow, that is a loaded question. I think that a lot of people do make high quality, great games. I think it's so much better than it used to be. I don't know why people don't feel this way. I remember like showing up at E3s and like games just weren't even complete. Like games would come out and they just like wouldn't even run. And like, I mean, it's so much better now than it used to be with the advent of things like, especially with kind of the migration to everybody using engines for like Unity or Unreal. Those have added so much stability to the game. It's incredible to the industry. People can make products that are, you know, playable, which wasn't the case always. So I think that's a lot better. But I'd say that the thing that is the biggest problem is the biggest problem always, which is you can work on a game literally forever. Like you can work on it and hone it and shine it, and there are bugs. There are always bugs. There are always balanced things. There are always things that you can do to improve the product. And I'm talking about forever, like literally forever. You could be working on a game. And so at some point you just got to say it's done. And a lot of times that comes down to the developers just out of money, and they got to release, and they've spent X amount of dollars and they're in debt or whatever, and now they got to release and hope for the best. And at some point, that's just kind of the way that games go. You just say, okay, well, this is a good point. Let's put it out there. You know, it's got a lot of the content that we wanted, and it has some polish, and so we're going to put it out there. But it's easier now today than ever to patch things and fix them, which is different, I think, a little bit than maybe console systems used to be. Used to be that you know, you couldn't patch back in the cartridge days, so it was a little bit you really needed to do a lot of QA on your product before you went and burnt a bunch of cartridges. And so the scope of the products were a lot smaller. But now, and even that was even kind of true during the CD-ROM era. But now that everything is like digital and stuff like that, it's so easy to make patches and fix things. And a lot of games receive tons and tons of patches and updates and whatnot. And, you know, I think that's here to stay. Also, it's just really difficult to make a game. I mean, it's incredibly difficult. People have no idea how incredibly difficult it is. I've done other jobs, kind of executive level jobs and things like that, finance things and whatnot. Those jobs are a freaking piece of cake compared to making a game. The amount of time and effort and passion and stress and grindy hours and sleepless nights and stuff is just brutal. It's kind of a near miracle that games get finished at all, because it's just so incredibly difficult to do. So, I mean, until you've actually made something creative like that, written a book or made a movie or, you know, made some music or whatever it is, like, and released it to the world, it's hard to understand how incredibly difficult it is.
That's crazy. Yeah, I actually studied computer science myself and graduated right before streaming. And I think I didn't make that many games. I remade an old game called Tyrion 2000. I remade that in C# from scratch, and it was a lot of fun, but it was very hard. And that was just remaking a game. Sim User is asking, David, do you think that Marvel Heroes could eventually be revived now that Disney holds all of the rights?
I mean, never say never, but I don't see it happening anytime soon, sadly. And it's actually kind of it's really disappointing to me that people can't play it. It's, you know, I spent 7 years of my life, almost 8 years of my life on that product, and the fact that nobody can play it is really weird. Like, people can play Gordo 106, the Mutant Lab Monkey, my first game or whatever. Like, people can play that game still today, but that 7 year, 8 year period of my life that I worked on is gone, and gone forever. So I really hope that it can be revived, but I don't have much hope that it will.
That makes sense. That's sad. I've seen like a lot of people in chat as well are sad that they can't play that game now. So, Justin James Wright is asking, what qualities of Diablo 2 do you think was made it like particularly the massive success that it was, and do you think current action role-playing games can learn something from Diablo?
I think that Diablo 2 was, kind of a product of its time. It was, what made it so popular to begin with was the fact that it was kind of revolutionary at the time in many ways, right? And so it was, invented skill trees and had, the seamless world and no level loads except between X, and had this great, deep, robust kind of crafting systems, and had the client server stuff and the ladders and all of these kind of things that really came together and made it really a superb product. And because of that, then there's a little bit of maybe some rose-colored glasses, but also I think that the game holds up really well because of the fact that it was designed to be replayable. Because it's replayable, then people can play it and it feels fresh all the time. It's different than a lot of other games, especially a lot of the games right around that era where kind of it was the advent of 3D graphics, and a lot of those games in the early 2000s, you look back and they're a little bit of an eyesore at this point, because the amount of polygons that you could put on the screen was pretty limited compared to today. Whereas the pre-rendered graphics of Diablo 2 using the equivalent of what people call sprites are it holds up today. You can still, the graphics still look good because of the fact that they had this kind of pre-rendered look to them. I think that the new remake will make the graphics look even better, but I think that it holds up just fine. So because it holds up just fine when you look at it, then people give it a try, and the gameplay has always been superb. So that I think that's why it it has such longevity.
I think I specifically remember the coolest thing for me about Diablo 2 that I remember showing my parents this was just the fact that like arrows would stick in monsters when you shot them. I remember I was like, look, even you can see the arrows, Mom, look. I thought that was so cool. There's so many cool things that even back then was just like whole next level. And it's so cool. Like, you guys came up with an entire genre. So I was wondering, do you, whenever you see your hero...
technically, but yeah.
Yeah.
Looter shooter and ARPG.
Yeah. For sure. But whenever something comes out in that genre, do you then like always try to like make time to like play? Like, there's so many new games like Last Epoch, Wilson, and Path of Exile.
Yeah, I at least try all of them, I like to keep up on the genre, mainly because someday maybe I'll make another one, so that it's something that I, not only that, but I just I enjoy the gameplay. I'm not as, it's strange, I'm not the hardest of hardcore ARPG fans, but I think it's mainly because it's more work for me than it is in entertainment, if that makes any sense. That I'm always kind of critiquing and learning and things like that, and digesting it as work, not really as, hey, I'm having a great time. Well, I am having a good time, but it's not like I'm really passionate about playing ARPGs. I'm passionate about making ARPGs, and there is kind of this difference. It's a kind of like a business-like approach to it rather than an entertainment.
Well, there's a perfect follow-up question here from Anima, who's asking, how did you come up with the concept of Diablo, and what made you guys motivated to make it? So, like, if we can go all the way back to the start, that'd be sick to hear about, like, how everything got started.
Yeah. I came up with the original concept and game name for Diablo when I was in high school, right around 10th grade. This was right after my BMX bike disaster. And when I was a junior in high school, which is 11th grade here in the U.S., I moved from the southeastern part of the United States to California, to near San Francisco, and Silicon Valley, and moved to the kind of the East Bay of the Bay Area. We're at the base of a mountain called Mount Diablo, and that's where the name comes from. I didn't speak any Spanish when I came here, and when I found out what the name of the mountain meant, that it was, the devil in Spanish, then I was like, oh man, I'm going to use that someday. And so that's really where the name came from. And the game kind of, I was a huge fan of RPGs in general. I loved everything like Might and Magics and Bard's Tale and Ultima and like all of these, wizardry and things like that. I love those games so much. So that was really what I wanted to kind of make, were RPGs. And so I started about designing RPGs in Diablo. And then when I went to college, went to the university, I played a game, started playing a bunch of games that, a game called Rogue, where the term roguelike comes from. Yeah. And I really got hooked on these style of games. In particular, there was some Tolkien-esque ones, J.R.R. Tolkien-esque ones that were Moria, which, Mines of Moria, and Angband were the two, and Moria. They were all these kind of derivative. It had the lore of, like, Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and had the characters and things like that. You could play as hobbits and elves and whatnot, and but it was, you were the kind of at symbol wandering through a dungeon made of hashtag symbols and dots for the floor, attacking the letter K, which is a kobold, and so it was all ASCII. It was all, but it was really super addictive. It had a very simple goal in Moria that was kill the Balrog, and so you would traverse the mines of Moria, mining and killing monsters and stuff, and it would drop random loot. And the random system was very, very simple, but it had randomized levels and randomized loot. Both of them were, as simple as can be. It was kind of the beginning of this, and that was really, the biggest inspiration for Diablo. I spent thousands of hours playing those games in college. That was I loved those games. I still go back and play Angband every now and then. In fact, we streamed playing it about a year ago or 2 years ago. It's still really fun to this day. And so it was kind of turn-based version of Diablo, and the original Diablo design was just kind of a graphic update and deeper systems version of Angband, Moria, roguelike games, NetHack and things like that. There are a whole bunch of them, and so it was kind of a updated version of that with pretty graphics. Was kind of the pitch, plus a few other things. We pitched the idea of DLC. Before DLC even existed. This was like in 1993. And so that was inspiration of that was from Magic the Gathering, which we were really big fans of. And we put the whole design together in a design document. Went around to this was like we had made Condor. I had started my career. I had made Condor with two of the artists that it was myself and Max and Eric Schaefer, two brothers that I met at the very first company I worked at on that Gordo 106 Mutant Lab Monkey game. We had worked on it together, and we had this, like, we knew that the company was kind of shaky, and so we would kind of jokingly meet at lunch or whatever to talk about the idea of someday, you know, working together in our own company. And it was the code name Condor was the name of the we was, hey, we've got to talk about Condor at lunch today or whatever. It was like our secret word for let's talk about leaving this company and starting our own thing.
Awesome.
And so it ended up becoming the name of the development company. And then when we got together eventually, then and formed Condor a couple of years later, we needed to drum up business, and I was able to get us a couple of contracts to do some NFL quarterback club console on the Game Boy and Game Gear games contracts, as well as contract to do Justice League Task Force, the fighting game on the Genesis, because of my previous work that I had done at Iguana, which is a company I worked at in between Iguana Entertainment, and where I'd done Arrow the Acrobat and Pirates of the Dark Water and stuff. And so we needed to pitch games, and so we would, we wanted more products, and we were really big time PC gamers, especially at that time, and so we would go around and pitch game ideas to different publishers, and we pitched Diablo to probably 20 plus different publishers at the time, and they all rejected us.
Really?
And oftentimes we would hear the phrase that RPGs are dead.
Oh.
that nobody will make RPGs again. They're just like nobody's making money off of the RPGs, and so we got just rejected time and time and time again, and didn't really. And then by chance, because of through that working on the Justice League Task Force on the Genesis, turns out we showed up at this at the Consumer Electronics Show, which is basically E3 before E3, and there was a Super Nintendo version being done by a different development company. We had no idea that they were doing that there was two versions of this game, one for the Super Nintendo and one for the Genesis. We thought we were the only one. They thought they were the only one, and the games were strangely similar, even though we'd never talked or anything like that. And we got to know each other, and they were Silicon and Synapse, which then turned out to become Blizzard, and they were making Warcraft 1, and so we got to talking to them and pitched them the idea for Diablo, and they said, hey, it sounds interesting. After we finish Warcraft, we'll come out and you guys can talk about the game. And they came out in January after they finished the game, right before the holidays in December, Warcraft 1. And we pitched them, gave them a full pitch of Diablo, and we signed the contract within a few weeks to make Diablo, and that's how it got made.
Wow.
And the actual design document and pitch document for Diablo is up on my website at graybeardgames.com. That's Gray with an A, Graybeard Games. And you can download it, and you can look at the PDF of our original Diablo 1 pitch.
That's so cool.
Which is preserved up there.
That's really, really cool. I need to check that out. That's awesome. No, that's awesome. Okay, we have a very serious question to follow up on that as well. Matarkis is asking the really serious question: coffee or tea to start the day?
Coffee to start the day, almost always. I always have been a big coffee person, but I've been drinking a little bit more tea lately. But I don't know if you guys have seen the TV show Ted Lasso, but he really dislikes tea on that show. The character does. And he says, it tastes like kind of muddy water or something like that. And so like I laugh every time I pour myself tea. I think of that line from Ted Lasso.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit right. That's it.
So. That's...
But I do enjoy tea, but mainly I've been a coffee drinker for as long as I can remember. Since early in high school, I've been drinking coffee.
Awesome. It's so cool to hear about. I'm still a little bit in awe to hear about like Diablo 1 being made and stuff. And it's still crazy to me that so many people like turned it down. And I wonder how they felt like when seeing the success of both Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 afterwards.
Yeah, I'm sure that it was, they are kicking themselves. But one of the things about the Diablo 1 that when we pitched it, it was turn-based, and so it was Blizzard South, that we like to call them. They like to call themselves Blizzard headquarters. Suggested that, hey, what about real time instead of turn-based? And there was a long argument and debate about turning it from turn-based to real time. One of the things I didn't like about the idea of, I was one of the biggest holdouts on it, mainly because I really loved the tension of those kind of old roguelike games on the turn-based thing. You'd worked on your, it was permadeath. So, you work on your character for a week or 2 weeks or something like that, and you're pretty far in the game and you get yourself into trouble, which inevitably happened. And then you had these important decisions to make. Where like basically weeks of work were on the line. Do I drink this potion on this turn, or do I try and attack this monster that is going to kill me, or do I try and what kind of panic things do I have to help myself out? Am I going to use this wand which I don't have identified and I have no idea what it's going to do? You had all of these kind of strange, crazy things that you could try, and inevitably you would die, you would cry, and you would start again. So I loved that tension. It was like the sweaty palms moment of shit. Everything is on. My last couple of weeks is on the line here, and I just that tension. Still, there's nothing like that out there, and so I didn't want to lose that. I knew that in real time that it would not be the same. You couldn't make those kind of decisions. And so I thought we would really be missing something by changing that.
Yeah, no.
So I was really hesitant to do it, but in the end, we gave it a try. And then the moment that I tried it, I was, never mind. This should be real time.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, I agree. Like there's something special about like the feeling of hardcore and being able to lose everything. It's just really exhilarating.
Right.
Only Play Leeson is asking, what is the motivation behind the different Diablo classes?
Dungeons and Dragons, mainly. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons right around the time that late 70s, in the, Dungeons and Dragons first edition stuff, and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and Dungeons and Dragons. And we had the old crazy monster manuals and things like that. We would get together. We were just kids, and we would get together, and I didn't really care about the story or anything like that. It was all about loot and killing monsters and getting, holy avengers and things like that. That's what it was all about for me. So really, those character classes then, were the kind of archetypes that were used in things like wizardry or in Bard's Tale or any of Might and Magic and things like that. And so those were really kind of the inspiration for the character classes. I wanted to keep the character classes kind of relatable so that people could easily kind of understand their character by just reading the words. It was, I kind of understand the way that this is supposed to be. I'm going to be a warrior. Okay, I'm going to be attacking things with my sword and shield or whatever. And I'm going to be a wizard. Then that's magic user, rogue, things like that. Those are the people have an idea already about how to play that character, and so that I thought that was important. and made the game more approachable. And so it all came from originally from using from Dungeons and Dragons. As for the being able to in Diablo 1 being able to use all the other classes, skills, and stuff, that was kind of revolutionary thing that we decided to do internally. Eric would argue it just doesn't make any sense that myself as a wizard, I can't just pick up this club and smack somebody with it. I may suck at doing it, but I should be able to do it. So we're going to make it that you can do all this stuff. You just might be bad at it, and that's really where the skill system kind of came from, from our own design, and kind of the logic of making it a reality. As for like also one of the things that's important about Diablo that was very different than a lot of our RPGs at the time was the fact that it wasn't like kind of high fantasy. There were so many high fantasy things, even though it has this Dungeons and Dragons kind of archetypes to the character classes. The actual fact is that the world didn't have elves and dragons and dwarves and things like that, which were very, very like in every single fantasy game at the time, and we wanted to kind of go a different direction. So though we had a little bit of influence from Dungeons and Dragons on the character class, the rest of it was we wanted to get away from the high fantasy stuff and away from the Dungeons and Dragons style and do something different and darker.
Well, it certainly is. It's like it's very its own thing. Like there's not really any game as like dark as like original Diablo 1. I remember having nightmares about it as a child. I think I was 6 or something.
Fresh meat.
Yeah, and especially the butcher. I don't know why.
Yeah.
King Leoric never scared me, but I remember every time, and I would pretty much exclusively play the rogue just to deal with the butcher. And every time I opened that door, I would get like a knot in my stomach, and I would just run to the closest door and just bow him down from outside. Right. And I was like, oh, it was great. It's such an experience.
Yes.
That's crazy. Aurika Sora is asking, do you think that Diablo 2 Resurrected, as it currently stands, will hold up against modern isometric ARPGs if the design isn't updated in any way and that the game is merely relaunched with fresh paint? Or will it just be a flash in the past?
A flash in the pan? Is that what they...
yes, actually, that's what it says. I read it wrong.
Okay. Anyway, we can talk about the origin of that some other time. But it's hard for me to tell. I mean, Diablo 2 still holds up today. People play it. They stream it. There's still quite a audience for it. So I imagine that if nothing changed, it's going to still be really popular and introduced to kind of a new generation of players. There are some players that have never played Diablo or Diablo 2 and refuse to because, it's old and it's, tiny graphics and a tiny window and things like that, so having the new fresh coat of paint might introduce people to the game that have never tried it before. And I think that because of that, and the gameplay still, I think, holds up really well. I think that people still enjoy playing it quite a bit, and being able to do any kind of boss runs or things like that. That I see people doing it for hours and hours still. So I think that just putting a fresh coat of paint on it is fine. I think that it's a very, very tricky situation for them, in that they kind of had like two directions to go. They could keep the game as close to the same as possible, and maybe just do a couple small tweaks, but it's the small tweaks that you have to be very careful with, because you can't if they make a bunch of changes, then people are like, well, it's you're going to see #NotMyDiablo2 trending or something like that. Yep. They're like it's a really tough thing to do. So I think that they're approaching it in the right way. I mean, the only tweaks that I've heard that they are doing is auto gold pickup, which I guess you can turn off. And then they're going to make a shared stash, which is, and more storage space. I don't think that these things change anything, because people would just make mules and then fill up their stash or whatever, and then make these private games that would launch on BattleNet and then shut down and things like that. They so rather than spamming the servers, just having that kind of built in the ability to do those things or whatever, just I don't think changes the game at all. It just makes it more convenient, and so that I think that. The only gameplay change I've heard is auto gold pickup, which I think is a fine change. It doesn't matter, and it won't affect the gameplay at all. But you can turn it off if you want, if you're really into the clicking on the gold. And then I guess that they're going to have to do one small tweak, I think, to the AI and the skill radiuses and things like that, because in the game originally was designed for a 4x3 screen, and now everything's 16:9. It was 800 640 by 480 or 800 by 600 resolution 20 years ago. Then now everything is 16:9 instead of the old CRT monitors, which were 4x3. So and the game worked off the fact that the screen was that size and shape, and so we knew how far what monsters, when they were off screen, in the 4x3, we knew how far away that was. But when the 16:9, there's like more space on the sides, and so if monsters that were right off the edge of the screen, they weren't processing their AI. They were just like sitting there waiting to get kind of activated once you came in range. But unless they change that activation range, then you're going to have monsters on the edge of the screen just sitting around not doing anything. So they definitely had to increase that a little bit, which again will maybe slightly change the gameplay, but I think probably in a negligible amount. It just means that AI will run a little bit sooner than it used to, as well as your skills will, kind of went off the edge of the screen for you, like your arrow flew off the edge of the screen. But now it would stop before it reaches the other edge of the screen on a 16:9, which means you might be able to kill things up and down on the screen a little further than you used to be able to. But again, these are kind of minor things.
Yeah, I think it's a hard game to screw up. I hope. Like I don't want another Warcraft 3 remastered.
And they seem to be making all the right choices. Like they've said all the kind of right things in terms of they're keeping the game the same. In fact, the old game is running underneath. They're just redoing the rendering. So it seems like they aren't making any gameplay tweaks, and it's mainly just kind of like a graphics update, which I think lends itself to making it as close to the original as possible.
The scariest thing I saw for me, I saw a bunch of comments from players that hadn't played the original Diablo 2 that said they wanted rune words removed because they were too complicated. And I was like, oh no, please don't.
No, that won't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it will. I mean, I can't answer for them, but I can't imagine it's going to.
No, that would be horrible. They were like my favorite part. I always thought rune words were so cool, to the point where you can see it in the actual BlizzCon reveal video of Diablo 4, because I'm on the front row and I'm standing up and screaming when they revealed rune words. But then they started explaining what rune words were, and I was like, no, what have you done? I was so disappointed with the new direction. They're not really rune words. Okay. Marthos _ has a question. What would you say is the best memory you have of playing games? Or life, if you just have a life memory, that's really good.
I have no idea.
Very hard question.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of fond memories of, hanging out with friends and roommates on the couch playing Mario, or my friend and I mapping out a dungeon on graph paper in Wizardry, or my wife and I having 5 active EverQuest accounts going at the same time, playing together, and forming our own party and things like that. So I think that I have a ton of really fond memories of playing games, and that's why I continue to play today, because I enjoy it so much. All sorts of stuff. First time I played, World of Warcraft with my kids and things like that. That's awesome. Yeah, it's really awesome.
That's really cool. Stanswar from 11th Hour Games is asking, tell me more about Skystone Games and your future goals.
Okay.
Skystone is a really great initiative.
Yeah, thanks. Skystone is a new company that I created. A friend of mine, Bill Wang, and I created almost a year ago now, and we got investment in around July last year, and it's a publishing company that helps kind of indie and small game developers get their game out there and get noticed, and articles and stuff like that. Kind of the standard thing that a publisher does. Gives them capital, as well as markets the game, and does PR, community management, localization, things like that. That often happens with a publisher, and so, but the kind of the biggest difference between us and a normal publisher is that this is going to sound really braggadocious maybe, but it's me. You get me as an executive producer on the product, and so I'll give you tons of feedback on your game, and they can take it or leave it, do whatever they want with it, but I'll give them suggestions and help them hopefully make the game better, and so that that's kind of the goal. Is like, I've been through it a zillion times. A lot of times publishers, you'll deal with them and they're just kind of businessmen that are like looking at numbers, whereas we're here to kind of like create deep, long-lasting relationships with developers that we believe are talented, and help them along the way to become great and add to the game creatively, as well as support them in marketing and distributing their game.
That must be really cool, especially after you had like the experience with getting rejected for Diablo 1 so long. So it must be really cool to be able to help other developers get started.
I'm really enjoying it. We've signed 5 titles, and I'm quite excited about some of the products that are coming out. They're very different than a lot of games. I mean, they're very different from each other. We've got like everything from like a first-person shooter to a tower defense brawler mix, to a horror game. So it's they're all over the place. It isn't like I'm only making ARPGs in it or something like that. We're trying to do a lot of kind of cross-platform stuff, PC, console. We haven't done mobile yet, but I imagine that we'll do some mobile stuff in the future. But mainly it's focused on PC first, and then console and other things as well.
So I have to ask, like, if you've ever rejected somebody like to work with them, are you ever worried that you're rejecting the next Diablo?
Yeah, of course. But we don't really necessarily reject anybody, even if we aren't sure of the product. Like, hey, we're not sure if, it might be that, this may be a good idea, but it might take too much time and effort to actually have it see its potential, or it's going to take a lot longer than they think, or the product's not far enough along yet. Things like that are, but a lot of times we'll just say, hey, when you get to the next stage, keep in contact with us and we'll take a look at it at that time. But for now, we're gonna, it's no for now, but that doesn't mean no forever. It means, come talk to us when you reach the next stage, or we'll give them feedback like, hey, we need to see more of this or something like that before we would consider it.
That's really cool. Sloddy is asking, do you play any analog tabletop games?
Yeah, tons. I have lots and lots of board games. I have a gigantic closet full of board games. I have hundreds and hundreds of board games. So yeah, I play a lot of card games, board games. I also do a ton of puzzles. I love making puzzles. I love doing puzzles. In fact, I think I just tweeted last night one of the puzzles that I just finished this week, which was my Hellgate London puzzle that I tweeted out last night.
That's really cool. Have you ever played a board game called Resistance?
I don't think so. No.
It's like it's very similar to like Mafia or Werewolf and those kind of games where you're like betraying your friends, kind of.
Right. Yeah. They had that, Battlestar Galactica one, Werewolf and things like that. Those are very, a lot of them are hey, you're the spy or whatever. That's Among Us or whatever. The same kind of thing.
Yeah. I love Among Us as well. I love those games. Ricky Lawless is asking, why the secret cow level? What's up with that?
That's funny. In Diablo 1, this is kind of like the early days of the internet, and there were kind of like message boards and forums and stuff like that people would go to and talk about the games and about Diablo. And there was a rumor that if you clicked, there were like these cows on the kind of outskirts of town that really didn't serve any function. If you clicked on them, they moved. But that was really it. But there was like this kind of false rumor going around that if you clicked on the thing like 1,000 times, that a special portal would open up. And so, or maybe it was loot or something like that, like special item drop out or a portal would up. So it was something like that. And so people would go and they would like click on the cows like 1,000 times, and then obviously they were just trolling these people, but they say, "Are you sure you might have lost count or something like that?" It's like, no, I'm sure that it was. Well, I'll try it a little bit more. It worked for me, and those kind of things. And so in Diablo 2, and we knew about this rumor, and we would try and silence. We would try and say there's no special cow stuff or whatever. That's total BS. But in the second one, we're like, what we're going to do? We're going to actually put a cow level in. So we're going to go back to Tristram. And when we go back and rescue Deckard Cain, then, we'll use that as a way to kind of propel us into the cow level. And everybody hated Wirt because he was such a jerk to work with, and so having a slain Wirt and using his leg, I think, was kind of this the final justice to making the cow level happen. And so that was kind of the joke, was, hey, we're going to put a cow level in the game, and we did, and then there was cow levels in all our games.
So I literally suffered through exactly what you described. My best friend was like, "Have you done the cow level yet?" And I was like, "No, what do you mean?" And he was like, "Well, if you click the cow exactly 100 times, it opens a portal." And I like very carefully did 100, and literally just like you said, when it didn't open, he was like, "Are you sure you didn't do one too many?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll try it again." And I sat there very carefully, 1, 2, 3, and then I was like, I'm an idiot." Oh, good times. Good times. Never opened. Denarius 1981 is asking, why was Hellgate London flop or abandoned? It was one of my favorite games.
Well, it flopped for a lot of reasons. Mainly it was too buggy when it came out. It was a really complex situation. Basically, I'll try and condense the really long story into a few moments here. But we originally signed the deal with Namco to make the game. and they were very excited about us. And we were going to be, Namco has decided it had been doing console work for a long time and wanted to branch out and do PC games as well. And we were going to kind of be the cornerstone of that of their PC games division. And so they signed the deal, and we started work on it. And then about 6 months into the development, Namco said, never mind, and fired all the PC people. But they still had us, and they're like, yeah, we're not really even going to support you. We don't have a publishing division. This is pre-digital distribution, so we needed a publisher. And because we had to actually, manufacture copies and ship them around the world. And so you had to have a publisher to get your game out there. And so we were like, oh God, what do we do now? And so then we had to actually find a publisher, which we used Electronic Arts. And then we had the PC gaming division at Namco was going to make the equivalent of what is, kind of like their own BattleNet system that all the games were going to hook into. And now they weren't making that. So we actually had to start a second company and raise money for that to make the equivalent of the BattleNet stuff or whatever. And so we made a separate company called Ping Zero that we hired a bunch of people to make, the back end stuff for Hellgate. But we had to put that all together and make a separate company. Anyway, we were super busy through this entire thing, not only making a game, but ended up having in this panic situation where we had to make a separate company and hire an extra 100 people and do not 100, but 50 other people. It was 100 people total. Between Ping Zero and Flagship. And so all of these things. And then it came down to the end and we were like, shit, it's not going to make it. We're not going to be able to launch on time because it's just too buggy. And then we have nobody in our corner. We had nobody that we could go to for more funding, really, because EA, they had no skin in the game. They were just the publisher. They had spent no money on it. Namco wasn't going to spend more money. And our investor that worked, that did Ping Zero was basically out of money, was having financial trouble. So they weren't going to fund us. So then we tried and searched for another source of funding and came close with a bunch of different companies, but ended up not being able to secure more funding. And so we ran out of money. And that is why the game ultimately ended and the company ended, because we just couldn't. Myself and some other people ended up funding the company out of our own pockets for several months. And you can easily do the math that the payroll was extremely expensive. You can usually imagine that it's on average for a game developer is an easy number to work with is $10,000 per person per month. And we had 100 people and we were funding that out of our own pocket. And so that, to try and keep the company around, that's how much we believed in this product. That's how much we believed in the company. And in the end, it fell apart. We just couldn't do it anymore. And it's very sad. And we lost the IP in the process. We leveraged the IP while we were trying to raise money to kind of tide us over. And then we couldn't pay that back. And so then we lost the IP to this other company. Then that company got bought and we couldn't deal with the IP. We couldn't get the IP back. The person that bought that was kind of cuckoo. So it was, It was really tough. It was a really tough situation, very sad. And I'm still upset about it to this day for a lot of reasons, but mainly I feel like, I feel like I'm to blame for the reason that the company kind of failed or the game failed, because I think we tried to do too much. And the hype was outrageous. And we were just trying to overextend ourselves, and we didn't really take care of the company as well as we should have, as well as, there were too many, kitty cat. And trying to do too much with the game. We should have focused better on some of the things that made the game better rather than trying to add too much.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that's sad that it went that way, but it seemed like you guys did try to get it working pretty hard.
Yeah, we did. We really did. And someday I dream that I'll be able to go back and get the IP and make a second version, kind of to kind of bring that. I still don't think that an excellent looter shooter kind of style game, though Borderlands is very good. I think that there are some unique things that could be done in that genre that still haven't been done, and I would love to get the IP and make a second one someday. But
That would be really cool. That'd be awesome.
I don't know if I will. I'm getting there up there in age, so I don't know if I'm gonna have that opportunity or not. We'll see.
That would be interesting to see. And are you actually? I'll ask the next question first. JT Goose is asking: Is a It Lurks Below remaster in the works, and will it have awesome water effects?
Wow, JT Goose trolling me. I know JT Goose really well, so yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Right now, I've been working on a whole bunch of tech things and tools and new things to reskin It Lurks Below, and working on some back end stuff. I may end up just focusing on multiplayer things for it as well. So we'll see. I don't know if you call it a remaster. I don't know if you call it a second version. I don't know what you call it. But or maybe I'll just this is the new update or something for It Lurks Below. So I don't know exactly what will happen, but I am continuing to work on it and support it.
And in
the future, I'd love to add water, JT Goose.
Are there any other games than It Lurks Below that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, well, I'm working on those, games with Skystone. I'm playing them a lot and giving them a lot of feedback and things like that, as well as trying a whole bunch of new products that could be potential things that we would publish in the future for Skystone. I guess a lot of my friends ask me for advice. So I tend to work with them as well. So I don't know, but I also I'm been working a little bit on a kind of side project with Graybeard Games. I made a game called No-Nomancer, which is a free game you can get on my website. It was a game jam. Actually, you can see the YouTube videos of me making the game from scratch in 30 hours. Oh. It was like a game jam game that I made. It's a little puzzle game. I don't know if you guys know what nonograms are, but nonograms, they also call Picross. They're like this kind of like math puzzle grid thing that you solve and you make a little picture using, they got numbers kind of on the side that give you clues on how to form the picture, where to put pixels and where to put spaces, and then when you're finished it comes out with an image. Anyway, there's this, you can download it for free, No-Nomancer, on my website, and you can watch the videos on YouTube of me making the game. So I've been thinking about maybe working on a second version of that. I've been working on some of the tech and things like that for us, a real version of that game. And with a story and stuff. And so maybe I'll do that, but I also am still working on ILB and I'm doing Skystone, so I'm really quite busy.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a lot of cool things to be working on as well. Cluzo is asking, ask David who the main villain was in the second expansion of Diablo 2 and who the main villain was in Blizzard North's Diablo 3.
Well, I don't know who the villain is in the expansion of Diablo 2. I mean, that's there are a lot of villains there, and some maybe people that weren't villains but are villains. I don't know. And in Diablo 3, I don't recall exactly what our story villain was. We had a plan, but I can't remember what it is, or if I'm allowed to say what it was. And a lot of the times these plans were kind of loosely put together that early in development. It would just be kind of high concept ideas, and oftentimes they would change over time. But I'll tell you, was not the Diablo 3 that ended up being the villain in Diablo 3.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting. Duck Who has a question. Could you please ask, as a game developer for years himself, what do you think about crunch culture getting more attention the last couple of years?
Yeah, you know, I'm on. I like crunch. It's weird. It's not really politically correct for me to say it. You know, I might get a lot of backlash for saying I like crunch. But I think that crunch needs to be limited in the amount of crunch that you do. Like long-term crunch is super destructive. And in fact, I know this firsthand because it destroyed my marriage. The crunch for Diablo 2. The crunch for Diablo 2 was extreme. I worked every single day for about the last, 16 months. I took 3 days off the whole year. I averaged 16-hour days. I worked every day, every single day, weekends, everything. So it was brutal and had a huge impact on my life. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So that kind of crunch, I think, is super destructive. However, I believe that also a small amount of crunch is good. It can bring a team together. It can really propel your game to the next level. I think that working together on something and having a common goal and working really hard on it shows passion and shows that you care about it. But I understand that a lot of times that people get taken advantage of in that situation, and I don't want that. I think that people should be compensated for crunching, and when we've had to crunch in the past, we've tried to not only limit the amount of crunch, but also at least hourly people get overtime, as well as we try and do things like provide dinners to make sure that people aren't there all the time, and don't have to do it every night, and things like that. And so I think that helps. And then trying to limit to at least 1 day a week off, if not the whole weekend, also helps a lot. But I think that there are just pressure times in any industry in which, I've got to work a little bit more right now because some important deadline is coming up, or some big deal is going to hinge on me putting in a little bit more effort or whatever. And it's not just the video game industry that this happens in; it happens all over the place. So I think that again, limiting that to a reasonable amount of time and making sure people are taken care of is important. But I also believe that it can help, and a lot of times it's just because you care so much about what you're trying to do, and it's so complicated, and there are so many things to do at the end. Again, literally, you can work on the game forever. So at some point, you just got to put the line in the sand and say, "It's done. I've called it done. I've done the best I can do." But a lot of times, you feel like, "Hey, what is your best?" And this isn't not as good as it could be, because I'm hoping for the best for this that I want to work on. I want to make it better. I want to put in the hours to make it as good as it can possibly be. And I think that that leads to some crunch. But I also feel like there's a lot of people that feel like, crunch is just bad management, but I don't necessarily believe that. I think that that oftentimes things are, you can't account for everything, right? And so you have to do the best you can do. And anyway. Yeah, that's, I guess, all I'll say about it.
No, that's great. That's a great answer. Very in-depth too, especially it was very honest. I think a lot of people like that. Snake13 is asking, would you like a personal loot system for D2R? And it would be great to just hear your thoughts on like personal loot and stuff like that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't want instance loot for D2R. I don't think that they're planning on it, but maybe they would make it an option. I don't know. But that's one of the things. I mean, it didn't exist at the time. People didn't like the concept of instance loot. It didn't exist back then. So, or else maybe we would have gone that way, because I hated playing with Eric, because he was like a vacuum that I would work on for killing everything, and he would suck up all the loot. So I think that I would have been pissed off enough that I would have put it in the game so that he doesn't take all my stuff that I want. But now in retrospect, I think that it's good the way it is, and I wouldn't want to change it, because I think that it would have a big impact on the economy in Diablo 2.
That's fair. How do you feel about personal loot systems in general, as well as I would love to hear you talking about Soulbound and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that that personal loot systems, instance loot, whatever you want to, I love them. I think that they're great. There are disadvantages to them, though. The biggest disadvantage is that people can't see what you got, right? That's the hardest part, is like, ooh, you're excited that some cool thing dropped for you, but nobody else can see it or experience it in the same kind of way. And so, that's kind of disappointing. I think that that's one of the biggest disadvantages, but I really like it, because then it feels like, that you can tailor the loot towards your character a little bit more, and feel more rewarded, like you're getting rewards in a more timely fashion. So I like that. There's nothing more disappointing, I think, than just like killing something over and over again in hopes of getting at least something for your character, and you never get anything. I think that can be frustrating, given a certain amount of time. Anyway, so I like them, and my games like Marvel Heroes had instance loot. ILB is going to have instance loot, but I have kind of a solve for the problem with instance loot. I don't know if it'll work or not. I mean, I think that it'll work, but I don't know if it's the best answer. I haven't put it to the test yet. But I think that there are, I think that in general, I like that. As for Soulbound and things like that, my rule for this is that, yes, I do like Soulbound stuff. And it comes down to, especially in these games, especially in ARPGs, there's kind of this formula of the easier it is to trade an item, the more important Soulbound stuff is. And you can see this as a perfect example in World of Warcraft. In World of Warcraft, they have some items that are soulbound and some that are not. And they'll come out with a new dungeon or something, and you'll find, this bracer or these boots or something like that, drop, and you can sell them on the marketplace. It's super easy to get them. It's super easy to buy them. They put them up there at the auction house, and you can pay in-game gold or whatever to buy it from somebody, and the market fluctuates, and and you can equip your character with the latest, coolest stuff, or some of the things. But to get all of it, you have to actually do some of the content yourself, find it yourself. Mm-hmm. So you get the other extreme of Diablo 3, when it had the auction house and nothing was soulbound. Then it's the auction house game. Everybody's in the auction house just like buying the best stuff. Yep. And it ruins the game, because the whole point of the game is to find the stuff. So it's okay if you don't find everything, you do some trading for things. But the easier it is to trade, then the more important it is to have something soulbound, or the equivalent of soulbound, some way to get items out of the economy. If you can't get items out of the economy just gets completely flooded with all sorts of items, and you are in trouble. So soulbound is one way to do that. You can do something where, you can only trade it 3 times, or you can only wear it 3 times, or whatever. Like, there's a zillion answers for that kind of system. And that's one of the reasons that that trading actually works pretty well in Path of Exile, is because it's a real pain in the ass to trade
Yep.
in Path of Exile, and that's why the market isn't flooded, because it's a giant pain in the ass. And so I think that that I've talked to Chris about this a bunch, and so my rule is, the harder it is, just like in Diablo 2, it was really tough. You had to like go into this chat room and like, you were only in there with a few other people, and like trying to find the exact thing you were looking for or whatever. It was like really difficult, versus Diablo 3, which was, you could find anything super easily, and nothing was soulbound, and it broke everything. So the easier it is to trade something, it's more important to have that. And then the more difficult it is, then you don't need it.
That's awesome. That's a very in-depth answer. I think like personally, the coolest idea for Soulbound I've seen is like bind on trade from like boss kills, so that you can buy it, but you can't sell it onwards.
Right.
Christ Lumberjack is asking, how has the massive increase with the popularity of game streamers over the last decade affected the design decisions that are made now versus back in the day?
Well, I mean, it's had a huge impact, and it's awesome. That was one of the reasons I actually started streaming, was because of Marvel Heroes. When we were making Marvel Heroes, to be able to go on the stream and watch people play or interact with people streaming and playing the game, and then also for people to be able to play with me and stream and stuff like that was really awesome. I could get great feedback. I did this with It Lurks Below, being able to get feedback from people playing, ask them questions, find bugs, all sorts of stuff. Streaming has really helped in so many ways. This is something that I've done kind of in a crude fashion all my career. One of the things I used to love to do way back in the day is bring a playable build of the game to E3, and we would fly the entire company out to E3, and we would stay there, and we would go and we would watch people play the game, and we'd take notes and ask questions and stuff like that to get people's reaction and understand and feedback and things like that. And that was like the only way to do it back then. But now I can do that over the internet while people are streaming it. It's like it's incredible, and it's an incredibly helpful tool. And I love it. And I really loved I loved it so much in Marvel Heroes that was one of the reasons I did early access for It Looks Below, is that so I could get feedback from the community and watch people stream it and fix bugs and things like that. And that was it was a real treat to be able to do that. I really love that. And so I watch people stream games a lot. I watch Twitch a lot, and I love watching them not only stream my game but other people's games, and kind of getting their reactions and understanding the game a little bit better and things like that. I really enjoy it. I think it's been a huge boon to design, as well as being able to get good solid feedback and understanding more of your game and content.
That's awesome. That's cool to hear, like how that's like helped change things. That's really interesting, actually. JFC Fuller is asking, what was your favorite feature or idea that did not make it into a finished game?
Well, I guess one of the things that we did is that we had a system in Diablo 2. We were going to do this. We were going to, in fact, we had it in there for a while, which was that we call it the body part system. And this came again from playing Everquest, that when you killed a bat, you would get some bat wings or something like that. They would have all these little parts and stuff. And so I thought it was really funny that you killed a bat in Diablo, and then out comes a plate chest, where was it hiding that? Was it in its pockets? I don't know. Why is there And so I wanted to kind of come up with a system that made a little bit more sense, or at least thematically had some additional things to it. And then, and it would end up being, you would end up getting parts from the monsters, and so you get heart or eyeballs or like claws and things like that, and so we had that, and we had it in, and then we'd use those to craft things. So it was like another addition to the crafting system using the Herodra cube and stuff like that, that you could use these kind of body parts to do it. And then after they were in for a little while, Mike Morheim called up and said, these body parts, it's kind of gross. Like, I open up my inventory and it's just like, feels like it's oozing blood. There's just like all these eyeballs and hearts and like gross crap intestines and stuff all over my inventory. It's really disgusting, and it's kind of a turnoff. And we realized, yeah, shit, that's kind of true. It's maybe a little bit too gruesome to have all of these your inventory full of all these gross things, and so we ended up taking them out, and it was a really unpopular decision, not only with myself, because I really liked the idea behind the system, but also a lot of people in the office were really upset about it. In fact, there was a protest in the office, and people put up a little protest signs to bring back the body parts on their doors, and so we had these signs all over the office of people protesting the fact that we took out the body parts. Anyway, so that was an unpopular thing that we took out that I wish we could have added, but given the time, and we were under a lot of pressure anyway, we were just like, well, we can't go back and add that and come up with good solutions at this time. We gotta just kind of cut it and move on.
Wow, that would have been a very different Diablo. That's crazy fun to hear about. Let's see, we're coming up on 2 hours here, so we'll do a few more questions.
I got a hard stop in about 15 minutes. I have another meeting.
That's perfect. We'll end before then. Adelmu is asking, for somebody with little to no programming experience, but who dreams game ideas on a daily basis, what would be the best approach to get their first game out there?
Well, the best advice I can make is make a game. If you want to make games, the only thing that's stopping you is yourself. It's like asking a writer, an author, like, well, how do I write a book? And the answer is, well, you write a book. That's it. So I think that in a lot of ways, everybody has ideas. I mean, excuse my French here, but ideas are like a-holes. Everybody's got them, right? Ideas don't mean anything. Ideas becoming reality are what count. And so making sure that idea becomes something is what makes you a game maker. So if you can't do some of the things, whatever it is, I'm not a very good artist, or I'm not a very good programmer, there's all sorts of assets out there that you can use. There's engines out there that you don't even really need to know how to program to make them, to make games. It's easier now than ever to make a game, and in that way, the market is flooded. And so, I think that if you want to make a game, the best thing to do is to go about making a game. I suggest you don't make your dream game first, but you rather make a couple games that you think will be easy, and you can get through them, no-brainer style. You can even do something like, I'm going to make a solitaire game or something like that, or whatever it is, just something super simple to kind of get you through to understanding some of the concepts and really the difficulty of making a game and putting it out there. And kind of learn some lessons from that before you tackle a bigger kind of dream project. Starting out as a dream project on your first project is rife with disaster. There'll be tons of stuff you'll learn along the way before. Like I had made probably 20 games before I made Diablo. So, it was important. Even though Diablo was my first PC game, there were a lot of lessons that I learned before that. That made it important that I could then, make Diablo and learn from the things that I had done before.
Awesome. Denarius is asking, what are your thoughts on the current trend of loot boxes, aka gambling, hidden in current games nowadays?
Well, I'm not. I mean, I think gambling is very risky, and I imagine that we will see the end of the gambling at some point. Because there's gonna be, there's all sorts of like nefarious things that can happen and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I think that it all stems from the fact that the games industry is super competitive right now. It's more competitive than ever it has been, mainly because of things like engines, Unreal and Unity and things like that, making it so easy to make games these days, so much easier than it used to be. You used to have to really understand a lot of technology and things like that in order to have any chance at making a game, but that's not the case anymore. And so that plus digital distribution, being able to, before you had to have a publisher that had, could manufacture a bunch of boxes and put them in trucks and ship them across the world. The amount of people that could do that was super limited. So being able to do digital distribution plus these engines has really made it so easy for people to make games. And because of that, there are now over 1,000 games released a week across all platforms. If you count mobile, console, and PC,
Yeah.
there are 1,000 games a week. And so like, the competition is just sky high. The average game on Steam now, the median game on Steam now makes less than $4,000 lifetime.
Wow.
So the odds of being able to get a hit, the odds of having a breakout are like nearly winning the lottery at this point. With 50,000 games a year, it's so hard. You get a couple breakouts a year. It is just almost impossible to you have to really get lucky to be able to do it.
Wow. I didn't know it was that little. That's insane. All right. We have the most important question for last. This one's by me. Pineapple on pizza. Yes or no?
I'm a yes. One of my favorites is pepperoni and pineapple. I love pepperoni and pineapple pizza. So yes, I am a yes on pineapple. Yes.
No. How could you? Oh no. Oh no. Oh wow.
I don't regret it.
Oh, that hurt. That was. All right, David. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it.
Pleasure. Yeah, it was great. Some really good questions.
Yeah, very, very good. We have a great audience. It's great that I don't have to come up with the questions because they're smarter than I am. And a big thank you to Madiki, a man with hat, for helping taking questions from the chat. Couldn't do it without you. And yeah, do you want to shout out, like, where can people find more of you? I know your wife streams.
Yeah, we stream on my wife's channel, though not as much lately as we did maybe last year, because she got a job at a video game company as a programmer. So we're streaming only maybe a couple times a week now. That's at the Jungle Queen. And then you can, my website, graybeardgames.com. And then Skystone is my other company, and It Lurks Below is available on Steam, GOG, and as well as on Xbox and the Game Pass.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And again, it was a pleasure having you. And to you who are watching, either on Twitch or later on YouTube, again, thank you so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video, and more importantly, try to die less than I do.